do you think it's a bad thing then, this kind of shift that we're seeing someone like Mark Zuckerberg take, in that ostensibly he said that he wants Meta to become non-partisan? He sort of sees it, as far as I can tell, as having been quite explicitly and obviously left-leaning for a long time. And now he's saying, I'm a libertarian, I want a hands-off approach, I want to be non-partisan. You think that's a bad thing?
I don't believe him when he says that. I think that when people say nonpartisan, they have a bad understanding of what nonpartisan means. When people appeal to apoliticalness or nonpartisan, or these ideas that you're above, political bias, they want the aesthetic of being nonpartisan. But what actually happens is they are the most partisan. So, for example, when you say nonpartisan, the aesthetic that you're trying to wear and the ideal that you should be striving for is, I'm going to make a decision about a thing without really considering the political implications, right? Is illegal immigration good or bad for the country? Let's just see what the economists say. I don't care about brown people, don't care about black people, don't care about natives or whatever. I'm just going to look at this thing in as much of a vacuum as a human can, okay? That would be like nonpartisan. But so people want the aesthetic of that person. But when people carry nonpartisanship into the real world, what they really do is they go, oh, well, this guy over here thinks that, this guy thinks that. I'm going to think something in between these two people. That's not nonpartisan. You're just as partisan as the both of them. You're just averaging out their beliefs. And so the issue that happens is if you were in an environment, we could imagine an environment. We don't have to imagine an environment where one side is dramatically more incorrect than the other side, where your apoliticism has actually sane washed the other side and is hurting like any type of fight for, I would argue, like truth to exist. Because now you are sane washing the other side by taking a position in the middle, claiming to be nonpartisan and centrist, but you're always just like carrying water for the right. It's insane.
And which side is the left and which side is the right there? Which is the one that's
right now the right is entirely divorced from reality.
Yeah, I've heard you say you've had some choice words for the current state of right-wing America. Just to clarify there, you mean to say that because the right wing in America has gone so off the rails crazy, to sit in between the right and the left is not to be in the center. As well as that, there are two ways to be like a centrist. One is to say that on basically every issue, I'm a moderate. I sit in the middle on every issue. I think that abortion should sometimes be legal, sometimes not be. I think we should have some immigration, but not too much. Another way of being in the center is to be really anti-immigration, but really anti-gun at the same time as being really pro-life, whilst being super secularist, having quite staunch opinions in either direction, but when you take an overall look at someone's worldview, they would sort of average out in the middle, right? And there are two sort of ways of being.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways of thinking of moderateness, sure. Yeah.
And I think it's often the case that when somebody says, look, I'm a moderate here, I'm a centrist, but even I think this is a huge problem, that's just because they're just using the fact that across the board, their positions are pretty extreme in either direction, but across the board, they balance out in the middle. When they're talking about one particular issue, like immigration or free speech or something, they can say, well, I'm a centrist, but even I think that this is like gone too far, when really their centrism is just a result of lots of strong beliefs like that on different issues.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. I wish it did. In the real world, that used to be how moderates were defined, right? Mm-hmm. You could go to like Rust Belt voters or whatever, and you could find people that maybe were socially conservative, but really strong on like labor values. Or in some parts of the country, maybe you could find people that were really big on gun rights, but also, like believe in affirmative action or something, That used to be the case that it was like that. And in the real world, I think it is still kind of like that, although we've lost a lot of that because now the political teams are so separated. But online, people that label themselves as centrists or moderates are exclusively conservative fucking cowards that won't just identify themselves accurately because they want to wear the aesthetic of moderation while carrying water and sane washing the right because they have no political or moral values.
And are they doing that to whitewash themselves for the right or for the left?
I think there's different ways to imagine why they do it. In the best world, where I'm being the most charitable, they're doing it because they're just fucking retarded. I'm sorry, where they're an idiot. I don't know if you use the R word here. So what they do is they look at a bunch of people and they think, wow, well, the average of all these people's beliefs must be kind of true. So I'm just going to go ahead and take up the average because nobody on the left could be totally right and nobody on the right could be totally right. And that's like the best faith interpretation. The worst faith is that they are more conservative than they let on, but they like the aesthetic of being nonpartisan, which is cringe. Or or they're getting paid by another country to do propaganda in my country, which I think is affecting probably more people than we know at the moment, which is unfortunate.
Well, I agree with you about the aesthetic, right? Like, it's nice to be seen as someone who's balanced and fair, but who is this for, right? Because if you're like this secret right-winger, maybe you don't even realize yourself how right-wing you secretly are, and you claim to be a centrist, is that's either so that your right-wing listeners are somehow going to think that you're more worth listening to as someone who's not as extreme as them, someone on the other side, which, I don't know, it seems a little strange. It seems like people should be able to see through it, right? For a left-winger, if they're doing it so that the left wing don't like condemn them as this crazy right-winger, they should just be able to see right through that, right? So like, who is this for? And do you think it works? Do you think it does fool people? Do you think?
I mean, it seems to be. I think that some of the largest podcasts in the world right now are all people that claim to be kind of centrist or apolitical, right? I don't know if Candace Owens still identifies strongly as conservative or Republican. I know she has those values. I don't think Joe Rogan identifies as conservative. Right. I don't think that there's a third one. Tim Pool, has he finally come around to saying he's a conservative yet, or does he still pretend he's a centrist? I don't know. I know he used to pretend that he was like classical liberal or libertarian or whatever. Sure. But all of these people, like at the end of the day, like if you were outside of their apartment, you could hear them, with their Trump fashion dildos like every single night. It's insane. I've never met a centrist or moderate who's like, you know what, I think this is a real problem, and they're talking about something on the right instead of something on the left. They sane wash and they carry so much water for every single horrible thing on the right, and then when it comes to the left, it's like, oh my God, can you believe this particular thing, or can you believe that, or this or that? And it's like, who is even thinking about this? A really great example of this in the recent presidential debates is for Walls. It's like, when you went to Tiananmen Square in 1980 or whatever, it was like 30, 40 years ago. He's like, didn't you, later on, you said that you were there and it was actually 3 months later. And it's like, yeah, I said it was kind of dumb or whatever. If you go back and you look at the speeches that he gave on this, he wasn't saying like, there I was blocking the tanks. Yeah, he wasn't saying shit like this. It was insane. And then and they let it hang after he answers on the debate. They wait for him to expand more. And I'm like, okay, Vance, is it true that you don't believe in the results of the last election? And it's like, no. And people think these are like the same thing.
They both avoided answering the question, right? So they both must be as bad as each other.
That's insane.
You've got to be fair. We've got to be balanced and centrist about this.
That's insanity. That's crazy.